Keon Coleman is only 2 years into his NFL career, and yet everybody has completely given up on him. A lot of you have heard about how disappointing Coleman has been for the Buffalo Bills, but you probably haven't figured out why exactly, so let's get right into this. Coleman was drafted by Buffalo in 2024 with the 33rd overall draft pick, which is the first pick of the second round. Buffalo originally held on to the number 28 pick, but they opted to trade down with the Kansas City Chiefs before trading down again with the Carolina Panthers. While that might not seem too bad, a run on wide receivers happened literally after that trade with Kansas City. The Chiefs drafted wide receiver Xavier Worthy, the San Francisco 49ers took Ricky Pearsall, and the Carolina Panthers took Xavier Legette before the Bills drafted Coleman at 33. Objectively, none of these guys have really been all that great since coming into the league, but it does beg the question whether or not Coleman was really who the Bills wanted. Perhaps they thought one of these aforementioned names would still be there at 33 when they initially traded down. Nevertheless, they stayed put and drafted Keon Coleman over a couple of other notable playmakers. For example, Ladd McConkey was literally drafted the pick after at 34. And I want to mention that this was a pretty heavy wide receiver class. We saw guys like Marvin Harrison, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, and Brian Thomas all go in the first 23 draft picks in this draft class, so maybe Buffalo could be holding on to some resentment towards Coleman because they didn't end up getting any of those other guys that went in the first round, which wouldn't be fair at all, and I'm completely speculating. It's just something that might make more sense considering other information that I will be getting to later, so keep that in the back of your mind. When Coleman first got settled in with the Bills, almost every report that I had seen was completely raving about him. Not only was he a physical threat on the field with immense talent, but fans loved his personality and demeanor off of it. This level of likability carried him throughout rookie minicamp and then through training camp. He was excelling in all areas of the field, and many coaches spoke out about him being an immediate boost to a wide receiver room that just lost Stephon Diggs. By the time the regular season rolled around, that wound up being true. In the opener against the Arizona Cardinals, Coleman had 4 catches for 51 yards. Not a tremendous game, of course, though proving that he could be an instant impact player. Then comes the wildest roller coaster of a season that I have seen in a very long time. Coleman failed to bring in his only target in Week 2, and then got benched early on in Week 3 due to apparently being late. When he did see the field, he had just 1 catch for 24 yards in that game. I feel as though the panic wasn't really there though after this incident. After all, many rookies come into the NFL with at least a little maturity problems. If anything, this was seen as a learnable moment for the young rookie, and he did avoid off-the-field trouble for the remainder of this season. And now if you look at Coleman's statistics from the benching in Week 3, like if you look after that to Week 4, of the 2024 season all the way to Week 8, he looked like he could grow into a star. He totaled 16 receptions for 321 yards and 2 touchdowns. I mean, this was just a string of beautiful performances, and it had him ranked inside the top 5 for both rookie receiving yards and rookie receiving touchdowns. It felt like he was getting more comfortable in the offense day by day and developing chemistry with Josh Allen, and he's out for an extended period of time. Coleman suffered a wrist injury that forced him out of the next 4 weeks of the season, and when he came back, it was like we were looking at a different player. He had just 8 receptions for the remainder of the year for 160 yards and 1 touchdown, and it is incredibly important to note that 64 of those 160 receiving yards were on just 1 catch. So really, Coleman wasn't a factor at all coming back from this wrist injury. Don't worry though, the Bills still made it into the playoffs, so Coleman would have plenty of time to... Oh man. 1 catch for 5 yards, 1 catch for 5 yards, 1 catch for 12 yards. 3 catches on 8 targets for 22 total yards in 3 massive playoff games as a starting wide receiver. Okay, yeah, this does not look good. And I'm not the only one who thought this either. The Bills fans were frustrated that he couldn't become a factor, the head coach Sean McDermott was frustrated, and even the general manager Brandon Beane was mad. Beane stated that he thought Coleman took a step back since suffering that wrist injury that held him out for 4 games. To quote him, he said, "I did not see the same player down the stretch with the physicality and needing to use his size." And to later quote head coach Sean McDermott, he said this about Coleman. "As far as Keon goes, I thought he had an up and down first season, I really do. And I mentioned that after the year. I thought he got off to a start that he built momentum through, and then he got injured, and then from there on, it was rather rocky, I would say. We're looking for him to learn from these moments of adversity and come back and have a really, really, really strong offseason and get himself going into the start of offseason 2 here. You have to stay urgent, you have to stay on the gas, or this league will eat you up. Whether you're a player or coach, whatever it is, And that takes a certain type of person, a certain drive and determination and fire in their heart, and it's going to be Keon's turn to show that he has exactly that. Now fast forward through another very strong offseason, where he seemingly took that advice, and everybody kept talking about how he was developing and maturing as a wideout. Coleman even admitted publicly in those few months that he thought he was trash throughout his entire rookie season. So all things considered, he was still liked by the coaches and the fans and the players and all that. And he returned the favor by delivering one of the best games of his career in the 2025 season opener against the Baltimore Ravens. He caught 8 of 11 targets for 112 yards and a touchdown. And this game was absolute cinema, might I add. And Coleman was at the center of this come-from-behind victory. Unfortunately, he didn't know it at the time, but this was the peak of Coleman's second NFL season. The next couple of weeks saw him fail to surpass 3 catches or 30 receiving yards in any game. It was yet again 1 step forward and 2 steps backwards, but it only got worse from here on, if you can believe it. He was benched for the second time in his career, once again missing only a few early drives for disciplinary purposes. When he served that benching and returned to the field, he wound up having a pivotal fumble that played a large role in the team's loss to the New England Patriots. The next 4 weeks were much like what we've grown used to with him. He had 3 catches for 11 yards, 3 catches for 30 yards, 2 catches for 17 yards, and then his best game since the opener with 3 catches for 46 yards and a touchdown. And it's not like he wasn't getting opportunities either, because every single game up to this point in the 2025 season saw him on the field for over 50% of the team's offensive snaps. The last 3 games that I just mentioned, he had over 62%. The guy was a full-blown starter, yet failed to do anything, even with Josh Allen throwing passes towards him. And this next thing is really where I believe everything just broke loose. Coleman was listed as a healthy scratch for multiple games. It is one thing to be benched, it is another thing entirely to not even get dressed on game day. I think for most first or second round picks, they get a pretty long leash when it comes to this kind of stuff, yet Coleman was full on missing games down the stretch of the season despite being fully healthy. And as for the games that he did play in between the healthy scratches for the remainder of this regular season, it wasn't pretty. He had 2 catches for 9 yards and a touchdown against the Steelers, 2 catches for 16 yards against the Bengals, 0 catches against the Patriots, the second time, and 2 catches for 49 yards against the Jets. And the crazy thing is, even Xavier Legette was outperforming him, and I've already made a whole video talking about how bad he's been, which, if you haven't seen that already, I'll link it at the end of the video. I heavily recommend you all go check that out. But back to Coleman, this was a disastrous end of season for him. Even in the playoffs with Buffalo, he had 1 catch for 36 yards against the Jacksonville Jaguars, and then 1 catch for 10 yards and a touchdown in the overtime loss to the Denver Broncos. He was useless, essentially, ever since his Week 1 showing against the Ravens. I think the last remaining thoughts that he could still rewrite his story were snuffed out after this playoff run. And then to make matters 100 times worse, somehow, I don't even know how that's possible, head coach Sean McDermott gets fired and the floodgates open up. In the following press conference featuring general manager Brandon Beane and owner Terry Pegula, this was, talking about the McDermott firing, Beane was asked about the lack of talent across the roster, specifically at the wide receiver position, and instead of letting him answer, owner Pegula jumped in instead, and he said, and I quote, "Can I interrupt? I will address the Keon situation. The coaching staff pushed to draft Keon. I'm not saying Brandon wouldn't have drafted him, but he wasn't his next choice. That was Brandon being a team player and taking advice of his coaching staff, who felt strongly about the player. He's taken, for some reason, heat over it and not saying a word about it, but I'm here to tell you the true story." And I want to take a moment after that quote here, because I have never seen something like this happen in a long time. Telling everybody that your general manager didn't want you, and that he was only on the team because his recently fired head coach apparently wanted him, is absolutely insane. It was so crazy that Beane had to come out and tell the media himself that Keon Coleman was still his draft pick, which honestly, I don't really believe anymore. But that wasn't enough, though, so Pegula had to retract his comments and say that he didn't mean it how it was interpreted. More so that he just wanted to showcase the collaborative effort to build the roster, just as you do. So, yeah, I don't buy that at all. I don't think any Buffalo fans do either. I still think this is just insane. I've seen this so many times, but to quote that in a press conference, a public press conference, to say that this wasn't his guy. Our GM actually, he took the hit on this one. He actually took him against his will. That's crazy for a starting wide. I mean, the guy's in his second year. Why didn't this come out after Coleman was like traded or cut? This came out when he's readying for like year 3. Like, how do you expect him to still be on the roster? And honestly, if any reports are an indication, he's not expected to be. I've heard Keon Coleman like in trade like discussions ever since this moment, and it's very possible he does get moved. Now, I don't know how a player would even want to still be there after all this turmoil, like with the healthy scratches, and then for your GM and owner to apparently not want you. I mean, it's wild, really. And I don't know, I don't think he'll be traded before, this next season starts. Personally, I feel like unless he requests to be moved, which is a very real possibility, he will get one more year in Buffalo. If he does not perform early on, I could totally see him moved at the deadline for a very low return. It has been a roller coaster of a career so far for Keon Coleman, but of course he's not retiring anytime soon. There's a very long life ahead of him in the NFL, well, hopefully, and there is still a significant chance that he becomes the guy who everybody was hoping for him to be, whether that happens in Buffalo or someplace else. If you did enjoy this video, hit that subscribe button, leave a like, and drop a comment on whether or not you still believe in Keon Coleman. And with that, I will see all of you later.